Hello, welcome back to the breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a breaking news report coming out from Russia, and I've got some information today regarding a story that I shared with you all yesterday that US President Donald Trump reportedly spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin over the phone. And while he spoke to him, Putin allegedly said he was going to respond to the airfields being attacked over the weekend. And I have an update for you guys. Take a look at your screen. Kremlin confirms Russia is preparing retaliation for attack on airfields. Peskov confirmed that Vladimir Putin said during a telephone conversation with US President Donald Trump the day before that Moscow would respond to the attack. Yeah, so allegedly that's what Peskov stated today. He's the Kremlin spokesman, stating that that is true that Putin is going to respond to this. So I'm very curious to see what Putin is planning to do here. Do they have a lot of options to really respond heavily? Because from what we understand, a lot of these bombers were hit and possibly even destroyed just last Sunday. And this was a massive blow to Russia's war machine and also a huge hit to Vladimir Putin for launching this invasion into Ukraine to begin with. So we're going to talk some more about this today. We'll go over all these reports. I also have some information that a Russian ambassador is accusing the UK and the US apparently for being involved in these attacks, stating that Ukraine could have not carried out this attack onto the airfield, striking strategic bombers without the UK's help and possibly even the US. And also, I've got information today from an ex-commander of the UK military. He's warning about what Vladimir Putin could possibly do in response to any kind of, retaliation here. So what options basically does Putin have? We'll go over that. So let's jump into this. We've got several things to share with you here. We're going to start off here on X with Anadolu English. Okay, this is an agency, a news agency out of Turkey. And it says here, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Russia's retaliation for Ukraine's June 1st attacks on air bases will come as when the military deems appropriate. He called the strike state-level terrorism and said Putin wanted stronger global condemnation. Okay, so yeah, apparently the Kremlin is calling these attacks state-level terrorism, and also apparently the strikes on these trains in the Bryansk region. This is like north of Ukraine. We had a whole train basically that derailed over there, and reportedly it was due to some explosives that were planted on a bridge, caused the whole train to derail. We had like 388 people aboard this train. There was close to like a dozen people killed and several dozens more that were wounded. Pretty horrible attack over there, but nonetheless caused a major destruction to that train, and that's also why they're stating here state-level terrorism that they're accusing Ukraine on. So apparently they are going to respond to this in some sort of way. We'll have to see what happens, and we'll talk about that as we move on here. Now for Max 25, Putin has been hit hard, and I don't think he's playing games, says Trump. Trump also reiterated Russia's future response to the airfield attack. Something happened a few days ago, and now they're responding. So apparently this was Trump stating this today while he met with Friedrich Merz, the German chancellor, at the White House today. And while he was speaking to reporters, he reportedly stated this, that Putin has been hit hard, and I don't think he's playing games, and he believes that Putin is going to respond soon. So it makes me think with some of these statements coming out like this, that Putin is planning something very big, and for them to have all their strategic bombers blown up, especially if Ukraine's claiming that 41 were destroyed or hit to the point where they're not even usable anymore. I mean, I'm sure Vladimir Putin is going to come out with, full swing in here and a major attack on Ukraine. We're going to have to see what happens, but I expect something big to come out of Russia. Now take a look at this from Max 25. There's information that a strong Russian strike will be tonight, according to People's Deputy Kostenko. Okay, you see the date here, June 5th, 2025. So possibly tonight we could see a massive attack from the Russians. Maybe they're going to launch a bunch of missiles into Ukraine again. But what will they go after other than what they've targeted before, like thermal power plants, electrical substations, gas facilities, things like that? What more can Russia do to heavily respond to these strikes that happened over the weekend on these airfields? You guys can let me know, but it looks like they are preparing for that. And we also had a warning coming out from Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. The U.S. Embassy was warning U.S. citizens over there to be prepared and stay on alert for any massive escalation here in this war. So we could be expecting something big from the Russians soon. Now I want to show you guys this report coming out from Sky News. It says Russian ambassador partly blames UK for Ukrainian drone attack. Andriy Kalin pointed the finger at the UK when he said Ukraine must have had assistance in the weekend's drone attacks. Okay, so he's claiming that the UK and possibly even the US is involved in this and blaming them, that it wasn't just Ukraine carrying out this strike. So you can see here June 5th, 2025 today. And it says right here Russia's UK ambassador has told Sky News that Ukraine's recent attacks risk escalating the conflict to World War III, as he partly blamed the UK. Andriy Kalin warned that Ukraine's actions are bringing the conflict to a different level of escalation in an interview with Sky News' Yalda Hakim, and said Kiev should not try to engulf World War III. That's the very worst case scenario that we can imagine, he said. More than 100 Ukrainian drones were deployed inside Russia over the weekend, destroying more than 40 warplanes in an attack Volodymyr Zelensky said will undoubtedly be in the history books. Okay, and it says here also, Mr. Kalin pointed the finger at the UK when he said Ukraine must have had assistance in the attacks. This kind of attack involves, of course, provision of very high technology, so-called geospace data, which can only be done by those who have it in possession. And this is London and Washington, he said. I don't believe that America is involved. That has been denied by President Trump, definitely, but it has not been denied by London, okay? So they're stating that because Trump came out and said they didn't even know this attack was going to be taking place. Apparently, they were not briefed by the Ukrainians before these airfields were attacked that day. So he's claiming that because London or the UK has not come out and denied it, he believes that they are involved. Finally, it says here, we perfectly know how much London is involved, how deeply British forces are involved in working together with Ukraine. On Wednesday, Donald Trump said Vladimir Putin told him very strongly that Russia will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. The U.S. president said that he discussed the attack with Mr. Putin during a phone call that lasted more than an hour. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace, he wrote. Mr. Kalin repeated this sentiment, telling Sky News it is up to the Ministry of Defense to make the right solution, but we have to respond to it. A Downing Street spokesperson said, we never comment on operational matters at home or abroad. Okay, so that's why apparently the UK is not coming out and commenting on Ukraine carrying out these strikes over there. So pretty crazy, at the same time, now they're starting to say that the UK is involved, possibly even the US as well. And could that lead to World War III? I mean, that's pretty huge considering that strategic bombers were being destroyed. That's all part of Russia's nuclear triad. So finally, I want to show you guys a little bit of information from this report as well from Kiev Post. Odessa, Kiev, or a reactor. Brit evokes Putin nuke specter. Ukrainians dismiss it as grandstanding. An ex-UK colonel says that a Russian nuclear strike on Ukraine could come in 4 forms, but Ukrainians criticize his article as a far-fetched publicity stunt. Okay, so this actually came out yesterday. I wasn't able to cover this story for you guys, so I want to just briefly bring this up today. You can see there June 4th, 2025. And it says here, Colonel Richard Kemp, a former British military commander, has warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin could resort to tactical nuclear weapons in response to Ukraine's recent deep strike operations, including Spiderweb. He assumes that the West may be powerless to stop this Holocaust. In an article for the Daily Mail, Kemp speculated that Russia has suffered far more badly than the Kremlin had ever believed possible, and that a retaliatory nuclear strike could now be on the table. And it says here, there will be retaliation. The Russian president, afraid more than anything of appearing weak, cannot be seen to let such a devastating attack go unanswered, he wrote. Kemp argued that Putin might now calculate the use of a tactical nuclear device as opposed to a large strategic bomb could demonstrate strength and force Kiev into surrender. The appalling reality is that such a calculation might be right. He outlined 4 possible nuclear scenarios that Moscow could consider. So here they are. The first one being a strike on a Ukrainian military concentration near the front lines. Now, I would think that would maybe be using like an Iskander ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead on it with like a low yield to wipe out a lot of Ukrainian troops. Could that be the case that he's talking about there? You guys let me know. Let me know what you think. Second one being a nuclear attack on a Ukrainian airfield, potentially killing covert NATO personnel. Okay, that could be a possible one as well, considering that Russian airfields were attacked. Many strategic bombers were destroyed. Will they want to respond in kind and do the same thing? That's possible. A strike on a nuclear power station, risking environmental catastrophe worse than Chernobyl, that could be really bad. Also, like what happened in Chernobyl when that nuclear reactor exploded. And to also at the same time, right now, that nuclear reactor is actually exposed somewhat because the containment structure that was attacked a few months back by a Russian drone is not even fully repaired. So that could be a possible case here. Finally, a direct hit on a major city like Kiev or Odessa. So that makes me think of like maybe if Russia were to fire an Oreshnik medium range ballistic missile with a legitimate warhead on it, could that cause major damage? I mean, they've been talking about this thing, using it for a long time, that it could cause massive damage and civilian harm. So maybe they might fire something like that. But you guys let me know. These are some of the cases here that could possibly unfold over the next few days. And it says here the death toll would reach hundreds of thousands, he said. And even then, Putin might believe that NATO would not respond in kind. He could be insane enough to think that this would win the war for him at a stroke. Kemp further argued that Western nuclear deterrence has eroded since the Cold War, leaving little in the way of an effective response. I mean, that's scary, guys. I mean, think about that. Maybe this Oreshnik medium-range ballistic missile, if it is a real threat, and Russia has enough of these to strike Ukraine and cause serious harm. We're talking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people losing their lives in one strike. If that happens to be the case, and they claim that it's not considered a nuclear weapon, that could be really bad, if they were to attack Ukraine with that. And would that force Ukraine to surrender to the Russians? I mean, anything could really happen here. I know some of this might sound far-fetched, but we never know what the Russians could be planning here soon, as I'm sure they're very upset with these airfields being attacked over the weekend. So I just wanted to share these details with you and let you know that the Russians are preparing for some sort of retaliation, whatever it might be, and we're going to have to wait to see what happens here in the coming days. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in for this update, guys. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.